So I understand, in keeping with the kind of tenderness, that your moms saw the movie with you, and if you would enact that little tableau for us.
Oh, that. By the way, okay.
Okay, ready?
This is the best one I've heard
I'm
all day.
Diane.
I'm Betty Witherspoon. Oh my lord! Oh my lord! It's happening!
Oh, no.
Oh, this poor girl.
God. Oh my God, he's gonna rape her. He's gonna rape her.
He is. I know. I know. She's got it coming. Oh my. Oh no! How did you ever do that? Oh
my God, our babies.
At the very end, they were like this.
Well, good night, everybody. I can't follow that up.
We didn't realize we both had Southern mothers.
I've never quite heard your accent until I heard you backstage talking, and suddenly all the guards kind of drop away. You become this Southern miss, don't you?
Yeah, I mean, I'm basically have to hold it together to enunciate all the time. Because my Southern accent feels like a nice pair of shoes, like a good pair of slippers, you know?
Something coming from
into it.
Something coming from Dillage, no doubt.
Yes, exactly. My mother and her colorful scarf from Dillard's.
You want to tell? No, we'll let them watch 60 Minutes.
Somebody asked my mother to do an interview, and she's so excited. She's just planning her outfit, so she went down and bought a colorful scarf at Dillard's.
No. Tell the story about this. I'm not letting you off the hook with this.
No, I can't tell that story.
All right, fine. Don't tell that story. I don't care. Fine. I'll get it out of you some other point. Let me ask you this about your first experience reading the book. What did you... Because you start the movie where the book starts.
Yeah, I mean, the book started everything. And in November of 2011, Cheryl Strayed sent me the manuscript for the book that would be released 4 months later. And I read it in 24 hours. I was on a plane to New York. I was sobbing. And I got off the plane and I called my agent. I said, I have to meet this woman. I don't know who she is, but I need to hug her. And I called her, and I got her number, and I called her the next day, and I think I kind of scared her. I was like, hi, this is Reese Witherspoon. I don't know you, but I love you. And I feel like I went on this journey with you. And I just told her all the reasons that I wanted to make it into a movie and why I thought it was so cinematic, and that I loved that it wasn't sentimental, it wasn't saccharine, it was just her being so honest about her life. And I have rarely read a woman or a man or anyone writing about their life with such brutal honesty.
Well, she writes about her life as if she were a journalist, as if she were covering her own life. And I just think about that early stuff when she's talking about her brother not coming to the hospital, just how heartbreaking that was. When she says, I realize that he is a man, but he's still a boy.
Yeah.
And you can barely hold together at that point, and there's still another 300 pages in the book to go.
Right. And she was 22, 24, trying to hold her family together, and she didn't know what to do. You know, her brother and her sister, and they all sort of descended into their own versions of despair.
And when did you come aboard, Laura?
I, long after these ladies had done extraordinary work in making this beautiful adaptation by finding Nick Hornby or him finding them. And so I got very lucky because they asked me to be part of it and got me on a call with Jean-Marc Vallée. And then I read both the adaptation and Cheryl's book, which I had not read before, and fell as madly in love with Cheryl's voice as they did, and felt privileged to get to know her mother through getting to play this part.
And Bruna, what was your first meeting like with Cheryl? Do you remember that?
I do remember it, yeah. Reese and I met Cheryl actually together for the first time. It was amazing, you know. It was really early on. You know, the book had not come out yet, and she had actually just found out, but she couldn't tell us that Oprah was going to relaunch her book club because of the book, because she was so moved by it. And Reese and I sat and we had breakfast with her, and you know, we felt you kind of feel like you already know her once you've read the book, and then you meet her and you just fall so much more in love with her.
It's interesting, too, about the book, because it feels like one of these things that people I've talked to who read it, like my sisters have read it like several times and will call me up, you better read that book. So it's a piece of material that people feel really proprietary about. And I wonder if that was kind of unnerving for you guys, because people really hold that book close to themselves after they read it. and if that was something that made you guys nervous about turning it into a movie.
Yeah, I mean, we were nervous when it hit number one. I remember we walked in. I was in Atlanta shooting a movie, and I walked in, and Gone Girl was number one, and we just optioned that, and then Wild was number one, and we just optioned that. And I was like, I called Bruna. I was like, holy shit. I was like, it's one thing to identify good material. It's a whole other thing, and I've learned through time to execute at that level is hard. I mean, as everybody in this room knows, I mean, it's a crapshoot. You can have the best director and the best DP and everything, and the movie doesn't make any sense. So I was like, Bruna, we cannot fuck this up. She's like, I know. So then
not sure what that accent was,
Yeah,
but it wasn't Australian.
that was Australian.
She's doing her mom again. Don't worry about it. It's okay. But,
It's people always ask me like what we fall in love with, and we've really fell in love with the writing first and foremost, because I think many people could tell that tale, but she tells it so beautifully. But Reese and I were both very, like, one of the things I love about our partnership is that we both felt very protective of not just the fidelity to the book, but to her life. And that's our job as producers, to like kind of make sure the gatekeepers that we choose will look after Cheryl's story. And so we were very, very careful in our choice of like screenwriter first and then in our filmmaker choice.
Let me ask you, Laura, because almost every time she mentions her mother in the book, the word love comes up. And so you got to create this, but she's writing so much about her mother as this strong person who's suffering. And I just wonder how you found that character, because you really sort of, we can see you sort of constantly moved by your relationship with your kids. And I just wondered where you found her as you were reading the material.
Well, it's a very beautiful opportunity to get out of one's own way. Wisdom is so extraordinary when it's passed along to you, that, as this film, I think, lays out so beautifully, sometimes only with memory do we find the great wisdom that's been given to us. So if my job is to help portray the experiences she had in the moment, it's to do it with great subtlety, because maybe she didn't get it in those moments. The wisdom is given while cooking dinner, while running from an abusive husband, while at college together, but not imparted like, this is the lesson I want to teach you. And so Jean-Marc was such an amazing guide, and Reese the most amazing partner and eyes I could ever look in, to just keep it truthful and simple, so that only in reflection can it hold the weight that these great gifts are given to all of us, as we remember later they were.
How'd you get Jean-Marc on board? Because he had just gone through a pretty harrowing true story, I guess just before this, in a movie he fought to get made for a long time, too.
Right. Well, Bruna and I saw Dallas Buyers Club about a month before it came out, and actually my husband suggested he said, we kept thinking about different directors, and we just couldn't come up with the right fit. And he said, what about Jean-Marc Vallée? And I said, well, we haven't seen the movie, but we'd seen Café Flore and Crazy, and then we saw Dallas Buyers, and we were just blown away. Just the way he dealt with sexuality in that movie, and also a topic that could have been very maudlin or corny. Like, he just really made it this movie that you just couldn't pull your eyes away from. And so we sent him the script right after we saw it, and he was so moved by the script that Nick had written. He put aside another movie, and he said, I have to make this movie right now.
After we begged him.
Well, we begged him. Yeah,
we begged him.
We were like, it's about to snow on the PCT. We need to start right now.
I mean,
really,
it's very,
honestly, it was like we missed the snow on the PCT by 7 days or something. It was crazy.
I mean, I looked at the PCT after I read the book, and I just thought, I couldn't even imagine like going through the rest of the book, let alone making that walk. I mean, that's a really daunting document, just looking at what she covered. I mean, wasn't it like a terrifying thing just to look at that thing?
Yeah, you mean that weird book?
Yes.
I know. It's so weird and technical, and it has like all that maps and everything. Yeah, I don't know how she even made heads or tails of it. And the other thing that was crazy is like when she's walking in the snow, she had no idea what the trail was. she was just kind of wandering around, like looking for markers. And she said, I almost died during that 8-day sequence where I was hiking through the snow. And she's like, I wasn't scared of anything until I woke up and all her water had frozen because she'd left it outside her sleeping bag. And she didn't know where she was, going to eat. And it was just awful. And then the other part that she thought was the worst part of her whole hike was when she ran out of water on the Tehachapi Pass. And she literally didn't drink water for 5 days.
5 days, yeah. What was the first thing you guys shot, Bruna? Do you remember the first thing you guys did?
I do remember the first thing we did. Of course. We actually, it got a little bit muddled up because a week before, the first thing we were supposed to shoot was Crater Lake because the snow was going to cover it. So we were kind of fighting against the weather. So very important to Jean-Marc to shoot as much as he could in sequence of the hike, and then all the flashbacks were backloaded to the end of the movie. So we were supposed to shoot Crater Lake, but the government shut down, and who knew that every national forest and park is controlled by the government?
Welcome to America.
Of course. I was like, what? And so we were literally every day we were
days
praying.
Before we went to shoot,
praying that the government,
our locations were
would
national
start
parks.
up. So we ended up starting in the desert in South Bend in Oregon. So we shot a lot of that, basically the kind of just the beginning of a hike. Yeah. But the true beginning, we ended up shooting in the real Mojave at the end.
What was your first scene, Laura? Do you remember?
In college.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh.
Which was
The
very...
walk through the hallway.
Yeah. And it was the first time I met Bobby, who plays Cheryl Reese as a little girl who is, for those of you who don't know, who is actually Cheryl's daughter. So that was a very moving, amazing thing for all of us to have her there and have her be playing out this story with us.
Well, I thought was so cool about the movie, Reese, is that you do this thing I've never seen you really do before. It's almost like you're Popeye half the time. You're kind of muttering to yourself. And I was wondering where that came from.
Well, Jean-Marc has a really interesting shooting style that I never shot in before. He everything's handheld. The entire movie is handheld. There wasn't one dolly, one tripod, anytime. And he has one DP who literally carries the camera the whole time. So everything I had to do, he did backwards with a 40-pound camera on his back. His name is Yves Belanger. And
although your backpack was almost 70 pounds.
Well, that's
so.
true. Yeah.
It's sort of like backward.
He
always a mother.
Well, you struggled too,
You
honey.
worked way harder.
Yeah. Yeah, it was kind of like being in a documentary. I didn't have any makeup on. I didn't have any costumes to hide behind. There wasn't any other actors, really, a lot of it.
Yeah.
So I just kind of would get lost, and the camera would be there, but you didn't really feel the camera, and there'd be long, long, long takes because we were shot digitally. And some of the takes would be 45 minutes, an hour. Like one sequence where I'm putting together the tent. He didn't want me to ever see the tent before. So he literally told the prop people, don't tell her about the tent. And I was like, okay, but someone explain to me how to put together the tent, and I'll do the tent. And then he was like, no, I want you to not see the tent, and we film you putting the tent together. Go, action. So when you see me shaking the shit out of the tent and throwing and kicking the tent, that's because I didn't know how to put together the tent, and it kept blowing away, and it was awful.
But that sort of running stream of sort of unself-conscious patter is that just because you spent so much time from the camera, you just kind of really lost yourself and you weren't trying to guard and give a performance?
Yeah, and I think, Nick wrote a lot of that dialogue in that, he called it the mixtape radio, where you hear bits of a song, and then Jean-Marc implemented the part where part of it's internal and part of it's external. So he'd have me run all the dialogue in my head and then say the last line of the dialogue, and then sometimes I'd say all the dialogue, and he takes a lot of the dialogue from when we shot it while I'm struggling with the backpack. So he'd get all those effort noises during a take, and then he'd put them on. He's amazing with editing and sound. I don't know if y'all could tell. It's like we didn't know what we were shooting. I mean, he'd literally be like filming a plant or like a thing, and I'd be like, what the fuck is he shooting, Bruna? And when we saw the first cut, by the way, the first cut was amazing. We were blown away by the way he sped up the film and slowed it down to create memory. You know, memory isn't linear and at one speed in your life. It's like those shocking, embarrassing moments, and then it fades away, or it's really slow. Or I love the scene where Laura's like with her hands apart, and then they speeds up, and then it goes back, and that's the way you remember things, like in fits and starts.
Because I was wondering, because that's such a big part of the book, that sort of constant commentary about how much do I love you guys. Well, is it this much? No, is it this? I mean, that's such a beautiful thing. I was wondering if that was going to be in the movie and how it was going to be used, and how did you guys just work out? I mean, was that some of that improvised, or was that all from the script, or?
A lot was in the script, but as we've talked about, he is constantly shooting, like nothing you've ever seen. So he, as we've talked about, would get frustrated if there was like 3.5 minutes of downtime. So he'd be like, what is going on? Where is Reese? Reese is changing her clothes because in the next scene she has different clothes. But where? Behind the car so she can make it go faster? Yes, but we have 3 minutes. Laura, we do another scene. What scene? We come up with this. Okay, well, okay. Go down the road, play with the children, we film this. And then, we're there and there's a puddle and so we now have another sequence. Or go be with the horses. But constantly, not 1 minute wasted. Not 1 second wasted.
Yeah, like the thing about her saying that how much do I love you this much, that he shot it in 4 or 5 different locations and then used it over and over again. But it was only in the script in one scene.
Oh, really? Mm-hmm. Wow, because I mean that again, because it's that running thing, and I guess what I find myself struck by too, and hear you guys talking about the way he works, it makes sense. How you're both really physically in the parts. I mean, we're really aware of how different she is in the hallway in the college versus when she's at home. I mean, she's much more relaxed, and how different Cheryl is when she's by herself. I mean, she's a very different person. We get to see. It's kind of tough to watch because you're so vulnerable in that stuff. And I wonder if it was hard for you to do it and then hard to look at it afterwards because of that.
Yeah, I mean, it was really hard to do it. I didn't want to do any of it. I really didn't want to do the sex scenes. I really didn't want to do the heroin scenes because I knew Jean-Marc and I'd seen Dallas Buyers and I was like, oh, this is going to be like real, like that shit that looks really real.
Well, as a viewer, that doesn't sound so bad, but maybe if you're trying to find out a way to do it.
I'm here to demystify it. It's really not fun. No sex scenes are fun. They're just like, they're like shaking something. Well, I mean, sometimes they're fun, but it's a whole other set of story. But it's just, no, it was hard. But these were hard. These were really hard, Elvis. They were just not fun. And I called Cheryl the day before, and I was like, I have to do this scene in this alley, and I'm having sex with 2 guys. And I was like, what? Why did you do this? She goes, I'm sorry, I was such a slut in the 90s, Reese. But you're just going to have to do it, because otherwise people are just going to say, it's just going to be a hiking movie, and that's just stupid.
She sounds like a producer to me. I mean,
she's awesome. I mean, she's not here, but she's. I mean, if you could hear her talk, you'd know that why I don't sound like I've ever sounded before. Because I literally, she has a wholly different voice, the way she talks, and the way she feels, and does not give a shit about how people think about her. It's really liberating.
Well, that's the thing that's so amazing about the book is that kind of detail. Again, the kind of stuff that she reveals about herself in the book. You would think that she at some point would try to excuse it or say, well, it was because of this and this, but she just writes it out like it happened like this and this. And even when she's describing these awful moments, she's almost doing it with this kind of repertorial perspective. And did that inform the way you guys played? That she, I don't want to say detached, but she's just writing these things as they happen. Did that help in terms of you shaping performance? Yeah.
Reese would say.
But you said you read the book after you saw the script.
Yeah, I mean,
how much did the book shape your taking on the performance?
A great deal, and her incredible, cracked open heart with every question we ask of her and everything she offers. And, it's so judgmentless of how she got to where she is, that one thing that I thought was amazing that never occurred to me till I saw the movie is how her voice informed Jean-Marc's choices in terms of having the mother replicate that same path. Like what you said about the repetition of these, how much do I love you in these various locations. It was as though he implanted this experience of watching a little girl watch her mother grow into the woman she wanted to be in a heartbreakingly short-lived way, which she speaks to in the car to her daughter by saying, just when I thought I was in the driver's seat of my own life. But so you feel this daughter trying to take off from where her mother was sort of left. And, how Cheryl informed that through her writing, and then all the collaborators and all the artists, the production design, the music, everything tried to honor her voice was what was so stunning to be part of.
And again, that question for you too, that sort of almost attachment that she had in writing the book, did that inform your performance as well?
I mean, from what I've, just listening to Cheryl and talk about, how did she get to tell that truth? Those parts of yourself that you don't want anybody to know about, and she writes about them. She says when she's writing, it's always the last sentence she writes that she goes a little bit too far. And she always thinks about deleting it, but she leaves it there overnight, and then the next morning she always wakes up and she goes, nope, I'm going to leave it. And it's that little piece that it just went a little bit too far. And that's how I kind of felt about a lot of the scenes that we were in. I felt like it was just every time. And we did stuff in the movie that we really pushed. We pushed the sexuality. We pushed the violence. And, sometimes it's there and sometimes it's not. But it's always that you got to try to push to that edge, because that's what creates something new.
And I think the thing that Reese isn't saying, which is to her credit, I think, is that she, both as an actor and a producer, was insistent we make the film outside the system so that we didn't have to shortchange any of that stuff and Cheryl's voice. And so we developed the book very much outside the system so that we could shoot, so that nobody could say to her, we don't want to see Reese shoot heroin, we don't want to see her do nudity, because we might have encountered that, but she made a very, very strong choice to develop this so that
I'm glad you mentioned that, Bruna, because that's the thing that had this been a studio kind of thing, at some point there'd be a point where she tries to excuse her behavior. And Cheryl never does that in the book.
Never.
And so that was a real strategy you guys had, to just sort of develop it on your own and stay away from those kinds of notes, to say, well, but we have to like her. Yeah,
I mean, when the book, when we bought the book and then it was Oprah's book, we got so many people coming after us going, we want it, we want it, we want it. But again, like what Bruna said, I've been in meetings where I was trying to do somebody's real life story and they're like, well, we don't really want you to curse. And we don't really want you to have any sex scenes, or you really can't do drugs. And I was like, that's not, I just knew that Cheryl had told the whole truth, and I had to be brave enough as an artist to tell the whole truth too. So we developed it outside the system, had Nick Hornby write it, and we got private money, and then we took it to the studios and we said, we're not changing a word. This is the movie we're making, and take it or leave it. And we got 3 offers that day, which was pretty cool.
I have to ask, and I want you all to kind of answer this question, because I'd like to hear from all of you what Cheryl thought when she saw the movie. Let's start with you, Bruna.
I mean, it was obviously she was, even just from her first conversations with Jean-Marc and with us, she was very much part of our process. And her and her husband, Brian, who's a documentary filmmaker, came to the edit suite to see for a very early cut, actually. We showed it to her very early. And she loved it, she loved it. And she definitely had a few notes and things, but just small things. And she's really been she was definitely part of that process kind of going forward. But I think she felt like it was different from the book, but that we, captured the kind of integrity and the spirit of her book.
Did you get a chance to talk to her about it, Laura, about her seeing you play her mom?
I did. We actually all had a meal together that night, right?
Yeah.
After she'd seen it, which was very beautiful. And she's just the greatest champion of it, and just for me, which is wanting to honor her mother very specifically, it was great to know that she felt that we had been as protective of her mother as she would have, and I think she felt that from Reese, from Bruna, from Jean-Marc, and hopefully from myself too. So that was beautiful. But I'd love to hear you share what she felt. But I know how privileged I was to be there when she spoke to how glorious she thought Reese was, and how thrilled she was to see how brave she was and how much it was true to what her experience was.
Yeah, if you want to, because it's got to be one thing to write the book and have people read the book, but to see this on the screen and know that lots of people are going to see that is a very different kind of truth to deal with. And what did she say to you?
Yeah, I don't think it hit her until she saw the movie. She was like, crap, now everybody's going to see the movie. But even when she was standing on set, she was like, oh my God, this is a movie about my life. But she said to me, she was really emotional, and she loved it, and she hugged me, and she said, I'll never forget, she said, I saw my words written on your face. She's beautiful. She's a beautiful person.
Wow, that's probably the best place to end one of these things I've ever had. Let's thank Reese and Laura and Bruna for being here.
Thank you. Thank
Thanks,
you all
guys.
for being here.
Thank you.